My name is Esteban, aka Steve, and we
My name
got
is Marina.
Marina, and then we got who we
And
got there.
I'm the elusive Ogie who will be sitting in on this call and giving my opinion once in a while.
Yeah, she's too
Yay.
beautiful for the camera.
Yeah, the camera might break. So,
We don't want to shock the audience.
yeah, we will reveal her at a different time when she's ready. It's just not that time yet.
So, synopsis, what the hell happens in Wicked? Well, we have our initial characters. We have the eminent Throp, who's a minister. He has a wife named Milena. She's pregnant and she gives birth to this child, but this child is green, which is weird in this universe because no one else is green. So they're like, WTF. And this baby also has these like snaggly sharp teeth. She's a very savage baby. She's afraid of water. The parents are upset. They don't know what to do with her. They also have another daughter
Wait,
who,
wait, wait. Pause. Just want to add to this Elphaba character that she's
please,
very similar to the Wednesday character. And I know Marina and Ogie, you haven't watched the show Wednesday,
I've
but
watched Wednesday, the new one.
oh, you have.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yes.
okay,
I
you have. Okay,
haven't.
you
I
have
guess
it.
I'm missing out. No, I
So for
haven't yet.
people that have watched Wednesday, the show, like the new contemporary show, she's exactly this character.
I would respectfully disagree, but we could discuss on
Oh,
that
we'll talk about that
later.
later. Okay, excellent.
Yeah, I could see some similarities, but I would not necessarily compare them in that way, but
Okay,
all
okay.
fair. So several years later, so going back to they have another kid, and this is the smaller daughter, Nessa Rosa. She's born without arms, but someone gives her these magical shoes, these ruby slippers, which eventually give her balance, but that happens later on because she's born without arms. But a few years go by, and we see Elphaba go off to university at Chiz. She's going there to study, and we get the perspective of a new character, Galinda. Galinda and Elphaba become roommates. And Galinda is very pretty. She's shallow. She's naive. She's sweet, but again, very shallow. She doesn't take a liking to Elphaba in the beginning because Elphaba is green and kind of not attractive, but they slowly develop a friendship. And while they're there, they learn that there's a lot of political turmoil in the land of Oz because in this universe, we have two different types of animals. There's animals with a capital A, and these animals, they have a conscience, they can speak, they have the same intelligence as humans, they take positions such as professors. There's this known professor, Professor Dillamon, who teaches at the university. And then there's regular animals similar to our universe. And the powerful Oz has been suppressing the rights of animals with a capital A, taking away their positions, treating them like regular animals. So this Professor Dillamon is ultimately killed, and Galinda and Elphaba tried to uncover the mystery. They tried to find out what the political turmoil is all about. The headmistress of the Shiz University wants them to work for Oz. She tries to recruit them for his cause. They're sent to the land of Oz. They
Madame
meet
Mariba, that's the headmistress. I
Marble.
didn't read
Lady Marble.
Lady Marble. I thought it was Marble,
Marble.
Marble?
like
Marble?
horrible
Mar-
marble, right?
Horrible Marble. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It is.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I was
it's
giving I
possible.
was
Yeah,
giving
no, I'm
a
probably
French accent.
Marble. Marbel.
Marible, uh-huh,
Marible.
who
Thank
was
you.
really
So
tall,
yeah,
and just
Madame
like the headmistress
Marble.
in Wednesday.
Also, again, very different from Wednesday. But
Yeah.
so they, at this point, when they're in Oz, this is where Elphaba decides to go into hiding. And we cut forward several years later, I believe 7 years, and we find out that she joined a terrorist organization to sort of fight against Oz. This is where Elphaba reconnects with one of her old classmates, Fiero. And at this point, Fiero is married with 3 kids. Elphaba and Fiero have an affair. Elphaba never tells Fiero any of the details that are going on with this organization because she doesn't want him to fall under the fire. But Fiero ends up being killed by the secret police of Oz. So then Elphaba travels to Fiero's widow, Sarima, who, lives with her 3 kids and sisters. And she lives with Sarima for a while. And then ends up happening is that Oz captures Sarima and her family. He ends up killing them eventually. And then Dorothy lands. So a cyclone comes, it falls on Nessa Rosa, killing her. Galinda shows up, and she's like, "Hey, girl, take these slippers. You can have them." And as we know, what happens in The Wizard of Oz, Dorothy follows the Yellow Brick Road. She meets Oz. Oz is like, "Yo, kill the Wicked Witch of the East." But Dorothy doesn't want to do that. So Dorothy and her group of companions, they travel to Elphaba, but Dorothy just wants to apologize for killing her sister. And Elphaba is just super ticked off at this point. She wants those shoes. She's mad the fact that Glinda gave them away. She's mad that Dorothy has them. There's a kerfuffle, and in that kerfuffle, Elphaba's skirt catches fire, and Dorothy tries to save her by throwing a bucket of water on her, but that kills Elphaba. And at the end, there's a coup that happens. Oz manages to escape, but the nation ends in political turmoil.
So we're going to be zooming in on the quotes. And before we do the quotes, we were just curious what your thoughts were, whether Elphaba's story is a story of tragedy or triumph. Do you think, like, overall, following the story, is it tragic or is it like kind of like triumphant?
It's tragic to me because it's her story and she's misunderstood and she continues to be misunderstood. So for me, it was kind of tragic. She never really, in this book, I kind of had an issue with it because she wasn't really like she was so like meh, she didn't really have like too much of a personality. She didn't really get close to anybody. She was just kind of there going through the events.
Well, she did get close to Fiyero, like very
She
close to
did, but
Fiyero.
it was very, very, very brief, and then he ends up dying. Like while they start,
Dr.
I feel
Dillamont, she got close to, very
she
close.
did. Well, she was doing research for him. I think she respected him. I don't know how close she got to him. Again, like I feel like before she could really get close to these people, I think they passed away. So I don't really think she ever truly, really, really, really got close to them. So
I,
it's kind of tragic to me, because she was really misunderstood and she just kind of followed orders, did this coup, took on the secret mission. But basically, by doing so, she isolated herself because, see, my favorite part of the book was the college years, her coming of age, so to speak, with Galinda, with her friend Bach. Those were like some really kind of, for me, was very relatable, and I like that part of the book. But then when she goes on this mission, she basically isolates herself, and it just seems like she becomes isolated and miserable, and it's just really sad because then after that she goes to live with Fiero's mistress, and I don't really think she's happy doing that, and then she dies. So to me, it's tragic. It was a tragic story.
got it. What do you think,
Sorry.
Maria?
Yeah, same. Definitely felt tragic. Like Ogie said, her beginning is also just very sad. Her parents don't want her. They just are dealing with her. So it's like right off the bat, she's a child born into a world that doesn't want her. And then when she goes off to college, the description of how everybody treats her, she is very isolated. And it is partially because she's doing it herself, but the other part of it is the fact that everyone sees how green she is and no one really wants to be around her and other girls tease her. So she's essentially raised in this isolation, and then she finds this cause that she's fighting for, which allows her to connect with other people. But the cause itself is very sad. I think she's in a monastery at one point, so she spends a lot of time alone, and she ends up fighting alone a lot of the time, and then it just ends in tragedy of her death, and she never fully accomplished what she wanted to accomplish.
And I feel like we never
Also,
really get to know her. I feel like she's just always misunderstood because she's just basically like kind of cynical, and we don't really like get to know her as a person. Like I feel like you get a sense of like Galinda's personality, and like I feel like you kind of get more of a sense of like Nessa Rose's personality. But Elphaba was very like bland and just kind of like unhappy. Like if that makes sense. I don't know if I'm explaining it correctly, but I didn't really like get much of a sense of like too much of like a personality with her. And that's kind of what my issue with the book sort of was.
I think it's tragic in that she's born in a terrible environment with some really weird features, and the things that happen to her throughout her entire life are pretty difficult. But there's definitely a lot of moments of her doing good things, like doing really amazing things and even being heroic. Like even her being a terrorist, that's her taking down this terrible, terrible Wizard of Oz. He's very terrible. So some would call him her a terrorist, some would call her like a liberator. So my first quote actually is relating to this is Milena, who is Elphaba's mom, she said, "We can always drown the baby and start over." And then the nanny goes, "Just try drowning that thing. I pity the poor lake asked to take her in." It's like, who's the more evil person in this book? Like Elphaba is not, I don't know. I feel like given what she was raised with, there's like I see a triumph against the evil that's all around her. And I don't know. I have to respectfully disagree. I saw a lot of her personality, a lot of her moral values sticking out constantly. And evil people are the people that like bad things happen to them, and because of that, they like do bad things. But she remarkably does a lot of amazing things given the bad thing that happens to her. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, I guess she just wasn't accepted, but she wasn't exactly evil. Like, I don't think she was an evil person. And she kind of did keep to herself, and she did kind of give people a chance, and she did have friends. Like, she was very friendly.
Yeah. She was definitely, I would agree that she wasn't evil most
No.
of the book. And I think I have a quote where she becomes essentially evil. I think it's the first person that she killed. The quote goes, "The icicle that Elphaba trained her gaze on, thinking on the weapons one needed to fight such abuse, it broke like a lance from the eaves and drove whistling downward and caught him in the skull as he went out to find some new way of beleaguering Lear." So that's basically Elphaba committing her first murder. I think it was Lear was trapped and killed in
The well?
the well by his brother Matic, right?
Correct. Lear is her son.
Lear is her son, and Matic was the one that died in the well. So like I feel like up until that point, it was a lot of Elphaba fighting evil nonstop, from like everybody trying to kill the animals to just her own family being super evil to her. I feel like it was a triumph up until that point, and then she killed Lear, and that's when things kind of got really dark.
You mean the other guy?
Maddox, not Lear.
Manic, sorry, Manic. Was it weird to you guys about the whole no arms thing with Nessa Rosa? I felt like it was like
No, I think she was very beautiful. She was born with a deformity. She had no arms, but she herself is like very beautiful. And then I think the shoes in the beginning, when they're first given to her, are silver,
what?
not red.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, they're silver. So the silver shoes make her shine, and she's just so beautiful that it doesn't matter that she has no arms. Like, everybody kind of forgets that.
I just feel it was weird from a writer's perspective. It's like such a random thing, but
I wonder if he did it because he wanted to have more of a significance to the shoes. So he thought, okay, how do I make
oh
it more
right,
significant? What's the most creative way to do it? Well, she'll need it to balance because she has no arms. And
Yeah.
so
right.
these shoes allow her
I
to
like that.
function.
And she can finally be independent and not have anybody like chaperone her.
I have a quote which I don't know if you guys caught, but it's regarding Nessarosa and Elphaba. And Elphaba is telling Nessarosa, "Hush, Nessa, hush, hush, my pretty. That's not the place for you or me either. Come on, we're going home, Glinda. Come on." Do you guys remember that? The "my pretty" part? No?
Somewhat, I remember her saying that she wanted to go home, but my pretty, like, is that why you thought that was ironic? Because that's how witches talk in like old fairy tales.
That's how she in the movie A Wizard of Oz, that's the scene. My pretty.
Oh, I don't know. I watched the movie so long ago, but
Yeah, yeah. I read that and I was like, was that like a nod to the movie? Which, yeah, I don't know. Marina, do you remember that one? That line?
I don't, but I could see that being a nod to the movie.
I'm curious if either of you guys thought there were funny moments.
I thought the college part was funny when she, like, Bach has a crush on Glinda, and he tries to get Elphaba to, like, he tries to get to know her through Elphaba. Like, I thought that was not really funny, but I thought it was kind of cute. I guess it reminded me of like college years. I
Sure.
didn't think a lot of it was like, I didn't really think a lot of it was funny, because it was kind of like,
Yeah, that's why I
ooh,
didn't include the quotes, because in my past experience sharing LOL moments, most of them are like, I don't find it funny, but I have a weird sense of humor.
I
And
have some
what Marina? What do you think?
WTF moments. That's what I
Yeah,
noted.
there was a
So,
lot of them too.
and I spoke to Ogie about mentioned this before, but okay. So, and that skin, I wouldn't want to have skin the color of shit.
I do remember that part. Yeah, I
I
do remember
don't
that part.
remember that. I'm surprised I like don't
I
have a
remember
comment
that.
on it.
That was kind of
Actually,
was
that would have been one of my LOL moments. Actually, that's probably
yeah.
one of my LOL moments.
How's
Yeah.
that an LOL moment? See that's the difference because for me it's like a what? Like a what? Like, because
Well,
it's
to me,
just
that's an
so.
LOL moment.
But the thing is, it's like imagine if someone reads this and they are dark skinned to see that on a page, to see someone else being described that way.
Yeah, but you have to put it into context of like 2023 or 2024 rather. And when this book
But in
was
any
written,
context, doesn't matter when it happens. It's just sort of like that's how a person's being described.
Yeah, I could see that, but then also like the author could argue and he could say that it's a fantasy land, right? So if somebody has green skin, that people have different skin colors and different qualities. So you can't
Oh
really
no, sure, yeah, no, I think
so
everyone
maybe
is
he would
speaking
say
on.
something like that, but that was really messed up. Also, an issue that I had with the way it was written, not to say anything bad about the book, but a lot of it was written in almost like a proper English, like Dickinson way. But then sometimes the author would put like random modern curse words. And that was kind of like WTF for me. I don't know if you guys picked up on that. I did.
yeah, I mean, there was definitely a lot of like variety in
Yes.
the writing.
Yes.
There
Like
was,
sometimes I felt like I would be reading a novel from like the 1800s. And then other times I'm like, wait a minute, there's like curses. And, even that line that Marina said, he has the skin the color of, SH. I was like, oh, well, this doesn't belong with the rest of them. And then he goes on being like describing something. I also felt like he would a lot of times just go off on like descriptions. Like he would just go off and describe something for like a while. He would write about something that I'd find interesting and that I'd possibly want more details on, and he'd make that really concise, but then he would go on about something that I wouldn't really care about, but he would like write it about in 2 pages. So I'm like, okay. Did you guys notice that sometimes?
yeah, from a writer's perspective, it seems like he was just fucking around.
What do you mean? Like you mean like experimenting with different writing styles?
Yeah, just like dicking around. Like
Okay.
there's one paragraph where he says her pubic hair grew almost purple than black in small spangled curls, a different pattern than Surima's. And the next paragraph he says it's Elphaba talking to Fiyero saying, "Yero, my hero," and that melted his heart. It seems like he's just like honestly just dicking around.
To that point, there's a description of so Surima has a daughter, Noor, right, who's 10 years old, and there's a point where Alphaba's living with them, and these troops from Oz come and they stay at their house.
Yes.
So then there's a point where Noor like goes into the soldiers' rooms, like lies on their beds, takes off her like
Oh yeah.
shirt, puts on their cape, and then she takes Elphaba's broom and like gets on it. But the
Yep.
thing that was disturbing for me is just the description. I like if I had it in front of me, I don't know if I would. I mean, maybe I would read it, but like it's just very graphically how he describes how she's naked underneath, how she mounts that broom, how she flies out, and how like the rope opens up and like her breasts are flying open. It's like, why are you describing this 10-year-old in this much detail with this scenario? Why is it
Yeah,
relevant? Why are
he
you doing it?
Yeah,
sexualizes her a
I
lot.
have I have that quote and I'm not going to read it for that reason. And again, it's I think it's him just like testing the boundaries of what he can say. Like I don't think he's a pedophile. Pedophiles don't usually I don't think would really do that. I think he's like
That's possible. But it's just
I
like it
think
served no purpose to the narrative.
Yeah,
I
there would
just
be really weird things in there. Like he would pay attention to these weird details. But also, I remember that Fiyero wed his wife when she was a child bride. She was 6 years old. So I don't know if in that world, because it's a fantasy world, if people just mature quicker and maybe a 10-year-old looks like a 20, like maybe a 10-year-old reaches maturity.
I mean in the olden age that's how it was.
Not 10. It was more like 13, which is still horrible, but not
I
as bad
mean
as
if
10.
you're yeah, I mean
But also, wait, but when they were wed, Fiera was also a child. I believe they're both young. Like she was younger, but like he was also like
He was, but I
like they
think
were.
he was a bit older than she was.
like the writer has like a privilege to say something like black people's color skin is shit, or a 10-year-old basically grinding on a broom. And it's
Gyrating
mean,
on this
Of
broom.
and
course,
it's
no, I believe in the author's right to say it, and it doesn't mean just because he wrote it doesn't mean that it reflects his opinion. It's just how he's describing it. So I do.
and I think it does relate to the book in regards to like how you develop. I think it relates to the book also about like evil versus not evil. I think he's trying to make a point about the rawness of life and how really bad things happen, really gross things happen, really troubling things happen at different ages, including sexual stuff.
See, but
And
okay,
yeah,
and I get that point, but the part with Nor and the broom, it wasn't like something tragic or horrible was happening. It was just that it was a level of detail put on a scene that didn't highlight any nature of evil.
Yeah, I felt
So
like
no,
it was unnecessary. Like I
it's
just
not
felt like
evil, but it's the rawness. I think if I was to,
yes, but why go into so much detail about the rawness of this
because
specific?
it's
yeah,
so bad to do.
what is so bad to do? She gyrated on a broom and she flew out
A
the window.
10
Like
year old,
she felt liberated in that moment.
yeah, a 10-year-old.
Okay, she's 10 years old, but what did she really do but fly out on a broom and she just bared herself? Her cape
No, I'm
flew
saying what's
open.
bad about it is it's something that, like in the real world, you don't talk about that. Like you don't go to like cocktail parties and talk about how when you're 10 years old you gyrated on a broom. You don't talk about this stuff.
Yeah, but
So
our
I
whole
Why
thing
is
is
he
what was the
talking about it? I don't know.
significance?
It's just I
Yeah,
guess
like what did it like? He went on about it at like for 2 pages.
I think it reminds me
what
of
does it
like
add to Elphaba's story?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He added a lot of little details and nuances that what was he really trying to add to the story? Or was he like Charles Dickens and like getting paid? No, because it was a modern day story. So he wouldn't be getting paid by the word. But I felt like he kind of went on sometimes when he could have just like that whole the broomstick scene, even if he wanted to just add a shock and awe, that could have been half a paragraph instead of 2 pages. It was literally 2 pages.
I think it reminded me of like Haruki Murakami. Like a lot of his novels are very detailed in the sexual space, especially on the younger side.
Yes.
And I think it's something to do with that. I think it's something to do with like, I'm going to write this because I can. And in the real world, I can't. And fuck you if you have a problem with it. But also, again, it's like about the rawness. There's a lot of raw moments and a lot of truth telling. I think he's like trying to tap into these like raw things that you're not allowed to say, but everybody's thinking. Not that everybody's thinking about a 10-year-old on a broomstick, but
Or her breasts. We are not thinking about that. At least I hope that we wouldn't be thinking of these things.
I just feel like if I was
wait,
to
hold
publish,
up. That's also having to do with a quote about what is evil, whether you act upon it or you feel it. Evil is an act, not an appetite. How many haven't wanted to slash the throat of some boor across the dining room table? Present company accepted, of course. Everyone has the appetite. If you give into it, that act is evil. The appetite is normal. Oh no, evil is repressing that appetite.
That was actually a very, very good quote. It says that everybody has the potential to become evil, but when we use our conscience, we can either act on it or we can ignore it. Like everybody in some moment gets angry and sometimes could potentially like you get mad at somebody, you know, and in that moment, let's say somebody really infuriates you, you want to slap them, but you are a moral person and you control yourself and you're like, okay, let me just walk away. So it's saying that, yeah, I agree with that. That's a good quote.
Did you catch the last line? Evil's repressing the appetite. I never repress any appetite.
Yeah, so that's like an oxymoron kind of because he's basically saying that he is evil. Who was saying that quote again?
No, no. What he's saying is evil is by repressing the appetite. So it's like saying evil is when you fight against what you want to do.
I don't think so. See, I don't agree with that because evil will
Yeah.
be just letting yourself be uninhibited and just doing whatever you feel like going like almost like animalistic, like just going with like leading from emotions with no logic, no moral, and no deeper thought put into it. So no, I don't agree with that. I agree with the first part of it, but the end statement, he like reverses it because he says evil is repressing, you know, those thoughts. Sometimes you need to repress certain thoughts. Everybody has bad thoughts sometimes. I mean, that's just human nature. We all get angry. We all get jealous. We all do things that are not quote unquote good and moral things, but it's about how you handle it.
Yeah,
Right.
so with that quote, it's
Mhm.
it's supposed to be there's a discussion between two characters. So that quote is supposed to be two different people speaking. That's why it's different.
Right. Yeah, it's two different people speaking. Yes, correct. So basically, according to that quote, you're allowed to think about 10-year-olds on a broom, per that
Right. So
logic.
I guess the question is, you can think about it, but if you write about it, and then like how much further are you supposed to be going? Like what counts as, I guess, encouraging like that type of writing? Like if you wrote an entire book in that style, is that okay? Like if the whole book was nothing but those types of scenes, where
Yeah,
does it cross over into morally gray or morally problematic?
I don't know. It
yeah,
depends what kind of audience, he intends it for. That's kind of troubling that a book, if somebody wrote a whole book, if it's like a child pornography book, I mean, it would kind of be
yeah.
terrible.
It'd be basically a trap pornography. Yeah, I mean, that's the defense of what he did, because it was like kind of like sprinkled in there, so it's obviously no one
He
would label this
sprinkled like
book
a
as
lot
dog.
of like weird, scenes, and then he omitted some things. Like I don't know if we caught that her father, the minister, had an affair. He was actually Turtle Heart, which is the man who possibly may be Elphaba's father. He also had an affair with him when the mom died. But that was so brief. Like it was one sentence where the dad says, "I took him as my lover as well." It was just so odd. You don't really. It was so subtle.
So
Just-
Elphaba's
Wait, just a
father
correction. So Elphaba's father is Oz.
is Oz. Yeah,
Oh, but what about the one that? Well, she doesn't know that it's Oz.
she at the
No, no,
end
no.
she
Yeah,
finds out.
At the
she
end, she
finds
finds
out.
out. But the father. Okay, I'm sorry to
No, no,
clarify
no. I think you're
this.
referring to he might be the father of Nessa Rosa.
Okay, but what I'm saying is the minister that raised Elphaba, who we think in the beginning is Elphaba's father.
Yes.
Okay, so in the beginning of the book, you don't know that the Oz is. He is talking to Elphaba, and she goes to visit her quote unquote father because at that point, that's all we know. We think that that's her father. And she talks about Turtle Heart, which is the man that her mother was having an affair with when she was a baby, the
Right.
glass blower. And then
Right.
the dad tells her, like, I don't know how she mentions him. She doesn't mention or say anything about that the mom was having an affair with him. But the father just mentions to her, the quote unquote adoptive father just mentions to her, oh, by the way, I like at one point also took him as my lover too. Like, did you guys not think that was just weird how that just got like mentioned and then that was it? It was just like mentioned for one sentence. I'm
Yeah.
like, oh,
No, there
I
was
feel
a
like,
lot of weird situations between Turtle Heart and the minister.
yeah,
Like the minister almost had like a crush on Turtle Heart at times, or
yes.
like an infatuation with Turtle Heart.
Yeah, but I thought it would be interesting if they like included that. Like that would have been interesting to see that play up in the book. You know what I mean? But he totally did.
Yeah.
Like there were some things that were so very interesting, but then he didn't like expand upon them. Did you guys notice that? Like that's something that I thought.
Yeah, I mean, it's a long. I can't. It's hard for me to criticize it, just because it's already pretty long book, and like, yeah, it'd be nice for him to go into more detail about this and that. It's possible actually on the first draft it was longer, and maybe during editing they like made it shorter because they're like, oh, this is unnecessarily long or unnecessarily short. I don't know. I find it hard to criticize like that kind of thing. Like I wish this was longer. I wish you went into more detail, but I see how you want it because you like that part, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was just interesting, because I feel like at the whole time he knew that he was being like cuckolded. I feel like he knew the whole time that the mom was cheating on him with Turtle Heart.
And he was fine with it. He was
He was
not only
fine
fine,
with it because
he was not only
secretly
fine with
there
it,
was
he
there
was
might have
like,
been overlap. You know what I mean? Like they might have both have been with Turtle Heart at the same time, so he had to have been fine with. Do you see what I'm saying?
yeah, isn't it kind of similar to that other book that we read, The Family Upstairs,
Oh,
where like
that was a good one. Yeah.
the husband was like obsessed, like he was okay with David.
Yeah, but that was a not a very consensual relationship there that was happening. That was just under
Yeah,
a cult.
yeah, it's
So
different, but it's like this weird like thing happening. I have a comment on that says, I just realized how sheep is pronounced versus sheep, capital versus regular. Did you guys figure out the difference in pronunciation between capital and regular sheep?
No.
no.
Yeah, me neither. But apparently, after reading most of the book, this line allowed me to understand it. It goes, these sheep, capital sheep, can tell you nothing. They've gone dumb. And then the next quote is, are they lowercase sheep? Does that happen? And for some reason, I figured it out there.
So how do you pronounce them differently? How are they said differently?
Well, I don't remember sheep. Maybe it's the emphasis is sheep. Sheep. I don't know.
All right. Wait, so okay, experiment. Say the first one with the capital S and then the second one with the lowercase s, based on how you perceive it.
Well, how I remember perceived it, because I'm struggling. These sheep can tell you nothing. They've gone dumb. Are they sheep? Does that happen? Sheep.
Are they sheep or sheep?
Well, one is a question, which is a question.
So he would ask like a lot of these, like in his dialogue between characters, they would have these like, I don't think he means that literally. I think he means that like it's like a kind of like a metaphor, because he's trying to say in the one sentence that the sheep, which is, I think he means like herd mentality, have gone dumb. Are they just acting like innocent sheep, or are they being spun around to believe something sinister, kind of thing? I don't know if maybe I totally missed it, but that's how I see it. I don't
I
think
like
it's an
that.
I don't think it's an actual pronunciation thing. I just think he means that he's using sheep differently.
Yeah, that sounds right.
But then
Yeah.
how do you pronounce it differently from
You don't pronounce it differently. He doesn't mean pronounce it as in like sheep and sheep. Like he doesn't mean that. He means like he's using the
Oh,
word sheep, but in two different contexts. That's what I
got
think.
it. My note was I realized how sheep is pronounced compared to sheep.
I
I
don't
should have
know.
left myself like an audio, like a voice memo.
You should have right away turned the audio on and and pronounced it.
So there's another quote about evil, since evil is a huge theme in this book. Quote goes, Bach is saying this.
Oh, I love
People who
Bach.
claim that they're evil are usually no worse than the rest of us. It's people who claim that they're good or anyway better than the rest of us that you have to be wary of, which that resonated with me a lot.
Yeah, because it's almost like actions speak louder than words. And it's also about like being humble. A good person isn't really going to brag about being a good person. And everybody who I met in my life that was bragging about how good they are usually wasn't that great of a person. And I'm sure you guys can relate to that. If you ever met somebody who was like, oh, I'm so good, I'm so this, you're like, okay, well, this person's not really good when you get to know them.
What I will say is
Sure.
the people that think, it's more important what you think. See, like it's not what you say. Like
Yeah.
she's saying,
Okay. Yeah. What you think. Sure. Okay. What you think. But I'm saying,
like it's more important. Like if you think like you are, well, actually no, sorry. If what you think is the opposite, then it
I
like
didn't dissect it like that. I just think people who say that they're evil, I mean, I don't know. That's also a tricky one, because if somebody's telling you that they're evil, I mean, that's kind of weird. Why would you say that
they're
you're evil?
they're like emos.
They're emotionally troubled souls. I don't know. But, maybe he meant like if people think that they're doing something wrong, not evil. If we take it as like if somebody thinks that they're doing something wrong at the time, they might be a good person because they may actually have a conscience. Where somebody that they think they're good all the time and right all the time, they are actually evil because they never go back and criticize themselves, or they never look at themselves from like a moral point of view. They're just like narcissistic. Like they think everything they do is good and, right.
With Elphaba being like the witch, which was cool. At some point, she became the witch, as from the narrator perspective. Her actions was a bunch of good things. Like I'm there's so many glimpses of her doing these really, really good things. Like there was this with Bach again, the witch, who's Elphaba, took one of Bach's children on her knee and clucked it at it absentmindedly. She liked children no more than she ever had, but years of dealing with monkeys had given her an insight into the infant mentality she had never grasped before. The baby cooed and wet itself with pleasure. The witch handed it back quickly before the wet could soak through her skirt because she would get hurt by it. There's so many moments of Elphaba, the witch, doing these great acts, including this being the saint. She was basically a saint.
Yes, when she was in the monastery and when she was in like
Monster, she was a
solitude.
saint. She tended to dying, and those too clumsy to die. She grew to see dying as a pattern beautiful in its way. A human form is like a leaf; it dies in a set piece unless something interferes. It's like watching a train about to crash, because like you kind of know how the book ends because of like Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
Yet you're like, and that's actually the one of the unique things about this book. I think this is one of the first books that takes a popular evil person and makes them shows the good side of them. I think this is like a pioneering effort. Correct me if I'm wrong. Marina, I think you went into more research about this, right?
I have not, but I could do it now.
I know
Um,
the Joker, which this is comparing a movie, so I don't know if it can
well, that was
be.
Joker was way after, and even
No,
Joker,
I know, but I'm saying the
even
movie The Joker, the one with Joaquin Phoenix, also kind of made you feel sorry for the Joker and kind of showed him in like a different light,
right, and
So
yeah,
and that's what it reminded
Beowulf,
me of. Actually.
hold
that's
on.
old as hell.
So yeah, but Beowulf is not the spin. In the 1971 book, John Gardner presents his take on this really old tale. So
I remember that. I think I read that in English class, junior year of high school.
Regular Beowulf.
Regular Beowulf, and then we read the other Beowulf where he's
yeah, so this is
not as evil.
so the 1971 book is told from the perspective of Grendel. So it's a
Oh, got it.
look at loneliness and how loneliness can, foster hatred and how this person was outcast. So it's just kind of similar to what
Very similar.
Maguire does in this book. So sort of taking the villain and taking that very similar story arc of the isolation and the loneliness, how that leads them and how that changes that character over time and
Right.
develops their personality.
From what I saw when I was doing some research into like the history of like Wicked, I think it was the first big book that came out.
Well, Grendel was.
Grendel came out before because
But
Grendel's in the
was
70s.
it that popular?
Yeah,
I mean, it was because we had to read it, and like also it was from Beowulf. Like that's such a, that is a
like
But
an
freaking classic.
epic.
Wicked ended up on Broadway. There's a movie happening. I don't
Yeah,
know.
but that's just like for putting on the stage play. Like Wicked.
Beowulf was a movie too.
So I have a quote relating to Elphaba's not being able to wash. So,
Okay,
like she couldn't get wet.
except
That's
for
like
with
her big
Figaro, she was able to with him. No, I'm just saying figuratively. I'm just kidding.
that's a
You see what I'm doing there?
uh, so I have a theory of why she can't get wet. And it happened during this quote where the nanny says, "You smell of blood, go wash up. Is it your time?" Which I think is a question about her period, but I could be
Oh
wrong.
yeah. It is. Is it your time? Okay.
Yeah. And then Elphaba says, "I never wash. You know that. Where's Lear?" And that made me realize, what if her not being able to wash is her not being able to wash away her negative emotions?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I thought that she was able to wash away her negative emotions because she kind of, I feel like she's upset about Fiero's death, but she kind of like gets over it pretty damn quick. I felt like too damn quick, if you ask me.
Yeah.
The hard part with that theory is the fact that that was taken from the element was taken from the Wizard of Oz, the fact that she is killed by water. So Maguire kind of incorporated that.
Ah,
But
right.
but at the same time, however, you could still say that Maguire decided to take, there's a reason why he decided to adopt it. So perhaps he had a reason for why he wanted to adopt it that was metaphor for something.
Right. But the question would be, did she metaphorically or figuratively speaking wash away her negative emotions, or did she not?
She
And
did.
so she did. I mean, by the end, I would say she did. And I have a beautiful moment where Dorothy is telling Elphaba, aka the witch, because I was very close to my mama, and when she and Papa were lost at sea, I could hardly bear it. So she was talking about her parents being lost.
Yeah.
And then the witch switches her talking to her from like this like anger to lost at sea. How do you mean? Said the witch, detaching herself from the clinging child. And I feel like it's the moment that the witch found empathy in Dorothy. That was my note that I left for myself because she had all this anger from the moment she realized Dorothy's house killed her sister. She took the shoes, and there was all this anger, 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 and it was a beautiful moment of her finding that empathy in this child who had a close relationship with her parents, and who the witch obviously, had a definitely troubling experience. Even with her dad towards the end, it was like such a weird relationship. So I don't know if you guys do you guys agree with that? Like, did she find empathy in Dorothy? Did you remember feeling that or not really?
I could
Maybe in
see
that
it from that.
moment she had a little bit of it.
But she was also
Um,
trying to kill her. She didn't really give up on that plan.
the witch was trying to kill her.
Well, yeah, like she died trying to kill Dorothy.
But she could feel in a moment some empathy for her, even though she's going to kill her.
Yeah, yeah, no, I agree. I could still see her showing sort of connection with someone, even if she's harboring a lot of feelings.
Interesting thing. So the end of the Wicked book has like a big group, a readers group guide, and in it mentions that Elphaba most likely came from L.F. Baum, Lyman Frank Baum, the original writer. If you take the initials, LFB, Elphaba.
Final thoughts. This book was really interesting. It was a very long book. Parts of it for me were cumbersome, but it overall did have themes that anybody can find relevant in today's society or in societies, even before today. It had the theme of evil and good. It had the theme of oppression. It had the theme of loneliness. It had the theme of wanting to belong. So in overall, it had themes that were relevant to a lot of people, and a lot of people could find it relatable. It was just a bit cumbersome. My whole thing is it was written kind of like Steve said, maybe experimentally. He wrote it in a kind of Dickinsonian way where sometimes it would be like almost like Victorian ways, written prim and proper. Then 3 paragraphs later, there would be a curse word. So it was a pretty interesting book. It was thoughtful. It offers like a different perspective, where you're rooting for the bad guy, quote unquote, the bad guy. So it was very interesting. It was an interesting take on a very lovable movie classic and Broadway play. And I think, it is a worthwhile read at the end of that. Let's say that. That's what I would say.
I like it. I like your conclusion.
I have one of the Dickinson quotes, by the way.
Yes,
Which,
go ahead and read it because I want our viewers to know that it's very Dickinsonian. At least to me it was. Go ahead.
okay,
Read the Dickinsonian.
so it goes, recitatives about structure, about color, about the basic shapes of organic life. He has a horrible sandpapery voice, as you might imagine for a goat, but how he warbled. Tremolo on the annotations, vibrato on the interpretations, and sostenuto on the implications, long, triumphant, open vowels of discovery. I was sure someone would hear. I sang with him. I read his notes back to him like a student of musical composition.
I love it. And I love Dr. Dillamond. He's one of my favorite characters in this. Bach and Dr. Dillamond I love. And, if you guys are watching this, you probably already read the book. So not a spoiler, but Dr. Dillamond obviously gets killed. Bach is a strong presence in the beginning of the book, but then kind of fades away and then reappears like towards the end of the book. But I very much like that character. I wish there was a little more on him because he was very interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and he was also just so nice. I liked him too.
He was like her one true friend. Like he was just a platonic friend who was rooting for her. And, he kind of makes her feel included. He gets her to go on that trip with the girls because he wants to get closer to Glinda. It was cute. I liked it.
Marina, what are your last thoughts on the book? Did you like it? Did you
Uh,
not like it?
Last thoughts? I thought it was pretty good. My feeling on when I don't like a book is when I can't even finish it. And this one, I didn't have trouble finishing. There were some parts that moved really quickly and got me really excited, involved. Like Oogie said, I got into the beginning when she was a baby. That part was fun because you see just her growth, her parents not knowing to do, Turtle Heart coming into the scene. That got really interesting. Her college years were super fun.
I love the college year.
Yeah, the introduction of Dillamond and then the death of Dillamond and all that, super interesting. And then I guess towards the end is where I think I started to get more confused simply because
Yeah.
it's a different universe. And so a lot of the language, the lore kind of takes time to get used to. And so I think I was struggling more towards the third act of the book.
Same here. The third act I felt was a bit drawn out. And in the third act, I felt like he kind of started to go into like these details about things that I wouldn't really have much interest in. So
Steve, final thoughts?
I personally really liked it, and one of the reasons I liked it is because of all the things that Ogi did not like about it. Uh, like all the moments that you said that you didn't like,
you
I
what?
actually really liked because of the contrast. Like
Okay.
it's almost like a really good movie or a good painting or a good song or any form of art is beautiful to me when there's like almost like a large variety of things happening. Like if you have a song that's just like da, 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 like a metronome, it's horrible. But if you have like really nice ebbs and flows and this, I just feel like it takes a lot of skill to be able to write that line that I said before, and then at the same time put in like disgusting like pedo stuff, but also just like really casual writing too, because it gets really casual as well. I think it takes a lot of skill to blend it together. And in terms of evil, I think he hit the nail right on the head in terms of like what evil is, how it comes about, and the complexity of it. I had a really long quote on evil, super long. It was about a whole page. It was the argument. It was when Elphaba came to the someone's house and they were all getting drunk together, and there was a bunch of people there and a bunch of guys, and they're all getting drunk, and they were arguing about what evil is. And that scene was like amazing because it was basically Gregory Maguire arguing with himself about what evil is.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
I
I
think
remember
it's
that
good
scene.
to understand where evil comes from. That way, so you don't become an evil person.
Okay.
And I think the book did a great job explaining it in like fiction form. I
Okay.
would highly recommend it to people for sure.
It is an interesting take on one of America's most beloved movies and Broadway plays. So yeah, I recommend it.
Boom.